So as promised, here's a painting tutorial on how I did the wings on a Khinerai Lifetaker. The paints that I've used are all from Games Workshop, the Citadel range. The paints I used were Bugman's Glow for a base, Kislev Flesh for a layer, Cadian Flesh Tone as a layer, Doombull Brown as a layer, Rhinox Hide, and for a shade on the veins I used Caribou Crimson. So to start with, we're going to give a base coat of Bugman's Glow. And as you can see, I thin my paints down quite a lot. I thin them in the pot. I don't really use a palette. I tend to do the naughty thing and just paint straight from the pot, as I find it just as easy, to be fair, and if you thin them down enough, you really shouldn't have much of a problem. Probably a couple of coats to build this up, although you might get away with just doing one coat, as we're going to go over the top with some layers after this. And as if by magic, that's the first layer of base coat done. I've done both sides of this wing, so I'm just going to concentrate on doing this one wing for the video, because obviously you'll get the idea from that on how to do it. Okay, so after one coat of the Bugman's Glow, it's okay. It's a little bit patchy here and there, but not horrendous. So I'm going to give it a second coat just to be sure that it's got a good base to start with. I primed this using an aerosol that you'll pick up at any car parts place. The one I used was made by Autotech, just a grey plastic primer. You can also get them from High Coat, I find work quite well. Just spray them on lightly from a bit of a distance. Don't, obviously go a bit too close with the nozzle and layer it on. Just a quick dust is enough just to give it a bite onto the plastic, and your paint will take really well. They're not super smooth like you get priming with an airbrush. The only thing I find is, personally, things like the Vallejo airbrush primers, they're not really a good quality primer. They don't bite onto the plastic the way they should. They sort of put a vinyl skin over the top of the plastic, which from a model making point of view you can't sand, which I know doesn't really matter so much with miniature painting, but if you were doing model kits, it's horrendous stuff because you can't sand it down the way that you can with a good quality aerosol primer. So I find that using that is completely fine. Like I say, just lightly, don't layer it on. I mean, if you're getting primer wrong, really painting's probably not for you, because it's pretty difficult to make a mess with primer unless you just unload the can onto a model and swamp it with it. So I'm going to give this a second coat of Bugman's Glow just to be sure that it's well coated. So the next thing to do is the Rhinox Hide, which I use to do all the bones across the wing, and it also gets used for the very edges of the wings later on. But what I found was, if I painted in the brown lines on the bones at the moment, it sort of divides the wings up, the skin bit in between, and gives you a good line to go to when you come to do it's not, well, it kind of is a wet blend, but it's more, you'll see as I go along, like a spotting effect that you do to create a line to wet blend to. It's not that easy to wet blend in a sort of horseshoe shape, so I found that putting little dots on of the colours was the best way to do it. So by doing this bit with the Rhinox Hide, it just gives you a line to go to between. So we'll start to put some of that on. It is the hardest thing ever to try and paint while holding your brush, you know, in a different manner to what you're used to when you're trying to film it. You're sort of a bit of at arm's length. So it's really not that easy. I do take my hat off to lads who do, you know, painting tutorials regularly. How on earth they manage to get such a brilliant job whilst filming it with all the gear and the lights. I mean, I spent ages just trying to set this up with lights. The difficulty I had just trying to not create too much shadow. I mean, I've never done this before. I'm not a professional YouTuber like a lot of people are. So it was just a case of messing around and trying to find a way of making it look okay that you could see, you know, really what I was doing. So I'll finish up putting the Rhinox hide on and I'll come back. So there we have it, the Rhinox hide is on the bone. I've also gone back and neatened up the edges again with some Bugman's Glow. It's fiddly to do the bones, so really I did it quite quickly, just painting the brown lines down there, and then went back along and neatened up with the Bugman's Glow just to tidy the edges up. And it also puts another layer of Bugman's Glow on, which is why I was saying at the start, you can put one layer of it on. You don't have to do two, because you're going to probably go over it again when you're having to neaten up, unless you really take your time with the Rhinox hide and get that on the bone really well. But I didn't. I did do the two coats at the start just to show you really, but I think if I was doing these in a batch, I'd probably just put one coat of Bugman's Glow on, then do the Rhinox hide, and then go back and tidy up, and as I'm tidying up, give it another coat of Bugman's Glow over the skin parts. So next, we're going to start putting some layers on the skin. So Kislev Flesh is the first colour we're going to use on the skin part of the wings. And it's really a case of trying to divide the wing up into 4 sections to get your fade between the colours. So we're really just going to concentrate on putting the Kislev Flesh up at the top here, really where the veins are, and come probably a little bit too far down beyond where the first quarter would be. So maybe take it down a third, and then the next layer will go down, maybe it's a third again, and so on. So we'll put some Kislev Flesh on. Again, this is me just painting out the pot. Naughty, but it's how I paint, you know. I mean, everybody has their own thing. I find it works fine. Yes, I do have a wet palette and I have used it, but do you really need one? It depends how professional you're trying to be, I suppose. I mean, for most tabletop standard sort of painting, no, a little bit's fine, and you can probably, as you see most painters do it on your thumbnail. I don't mean a little picture on a computer, I mean like your actual thumbnail. It's one of those things where if you're into it and you want to try it, give it a go, make yourself a wet palette up, great. You know, you'll learn something, definitely, I did. But in reality, if you're just painting up your models for an army that you're going to, you know, play, and not just stand on a shelf, you know, just go for it and go for out the pot. And I find that certainly with the Citadel paints, if I put some thinners into the pot when they're brand new, quite a bit of thinners, and make them, you know, real watery, I find that that's good enough. That thins them down enough for me, and I'm more than happy to take them out the lid of the pot. Have you got as good control? Maybe it's not. Can you make a decent job of your painting your model? Yeah, you probably can. So if you just want to sit down, start painting like I do, you know, come in at night or whatever, and just open the lid of the paint, get your model, pick your brush up and start painting. That's, you know, it's the way to go. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have a room where you've got all your stuff set out, brilliant. You know, you can leave it all out there and off you go. But for me, I'm quite happy, just pop the lid in the pot and off we'll go, you know. So I'll finish that off and then we'll move on to the next colour. Alright, so I gave that 3 coats, 3 really thin coats of Kislev Flesh. It's quite a transparent colour, so it does need to be built up a bit. And as you can see, I've gone down onto the wing quite a way. it's really a case of, you know, overdoing it so that you've got space to work onto the next colour and blend that in. And this is sort of where the artistic bit of it kind of starts. As you'll see, I'm hoping it's going to show up really well on the camera. I'm just using my phone to film this. I'm basically going to put dots in a horseshoe shape. Fine dots spaced out, getting into more heavier dots that are close together, sort of creating that faded effect that you get with pixels, if that's the right term, I suppose. So I'm gonna put the dots on in a horseshoe shape with a Cadian flesh tone, and hopefully, like I say, it's going to show up what I'm doing on the camera okay. Now I'm quite fortunate that I've got some cheapy brushes off eBay. I think they're like £8 for 5 or 6. This is a size 0, and I don't know if you can see on the camera, but the end of this brush is actually a little bit sort of bent. The bristles at the very tip of it, and that might have been a bit of a disaster. But actually, it's worked out that bend on the tip makes it quite good for doing dots, because you don't have a very sharp point on the tip of the brush. So I found this brush is quite good for that. Again, the paint's really thin, and just getting a bit of control now, like I say, using your thumb. So there's not too much going to flood off. I don't know how well this is going to show up here. I'm trying to learn how to do a YouTube video and do the paint at the same time. Not easy. So I'm going to make sort of horseshoe shaped dots, starting about a quarter of the way down in by, let's find the best way around to do this, in from the bone, across to the next bone, so sort of that kind of shape. And I don't know if that's, I mean, I can see it through, I've used like a magnifying lamp, so I can see it showing up there, but whether or not it's showing up very well in the camera, I hope you can kind of see what I'm doing with the brush, where I'm just dotting, putting little spots in that horseshoe shape. And this really is, if you're really good at wet blending, you probably don't need to do this. But if you've never really bothered doing anything with wet blending, you might find this is quite a good sort of lead into it. It's really just something that I discovered out of necessity, trying to create that fade between the colours. And as you can see there now, I'm just sort of thickening the paint up as I've got away from this edge, to try and create that fade. So a lot of tiny little dots, and then the dots get a bit bigger, and then just all close together. And like I said, I really hope I'm going to try and tilt that, so see if at some point it shows up on the camera. And then I'm just feathering that edge away with some really watered down Cadian flesh tone. And once you've got it like that, just let that dry, and then we're going to use that shape, that dotted shape, as a guide for doing your wet blend. Now, the beauty of doing this with the dots, it actually sort of sets you up for when you have to do, I'm out of shot, when you have to do the dots sort of towards the end in the darker colour. If I show you on the completed one, as you can see, the brown and skin coloured dots sort of here. So it gives you good practice for doing those. You don't have to be super perfect with it. You know, it's a tabletop model, and from a distance, yeah, it looks great on the table, which is all we're trying to achieve. So I'll continue to do the Cadian flesh tone on the rest of those. You can sort of see it, but you can see how the fade, the colour fade is going to start to appear there. Things never look great when you're doing them, and you always get that moment of doubt where you think, I've made a mess of it, or what have I done? I had that when I was trying to figure out how to do this. I probably painted the first wing 4 or 5 times, just went over the top of it and tried to figure out a way of doing it. So I'll finish off doing this and then move on to the next colour. Okay, so I finished off with Acadian flesh tone on all the sections of that wing, and what I've done is I've done all the dots in that horseshoe shape, and then sort of very thin layers of the Acadian flesh tone, just drag that away down the wing. And hopefully now I'm going to do the Doombull brown, which is the next section down here. It's going to show up a lot better on the camera, I think, the dots, as I start to curve that around. And it's just the same process again. So you've got your Kislev flesh at the top here, and then the dots fading into the Acadian flesh tone, and that's being washed away down the wing. And then the Doombull brown, we're going to leave quite a biggish gap here between the space before we start the dots, because there's sort of an area where the step is too great between the Acadian flesh tone and the Doombull brown. So what I found I started to do as I went along, I mixed the Acadian flesh tone and the Doombull brown together to try and get a little bit of a blend in the middle, which I'll show you how I did that. It's nothing particularly magical, but we'll put the Doombull brown on, and you'll get an idea of how the dots sort of show up. This is not easy at the best of times, so trying to do this on camera, we'll see how it goes. So I'm starting near the rhinox hide bone and coming down in a dotted sort of horseshoe shape like that. I'm hoping that's showing up. And then just dotting that in. Like I said, this is something that you don't really need to do if you're good at wet blending or anything like that. But it kind of gives you a guideline, maybe is the right word, just to sort of assist you where you're gonna put your colours. Just using a very thin, watered down, heavily watered down coat of the Doombull brown. I'm literally just washing it away right at the edge of the wings. It's one of these things where don't lose heart in it. Don't give up on it. Patience, I suppose, really, is the thing. It might seem like an awful lot of work just to do some wings, and there's a lot to do. If you had 10 of these, there's an awful lot of sections of wings to do, both sides on each model. But once you get the hang of it and you're into it, I mean, I think I spent probably about an hour and a half or so doing one model once I got the hang of how I was going to do it. So it's not forever and ever and ever. And it's quite a focal point on the model. Judging by the reaction, that got quite a few good likes on the Daughters of Cain group on Facebook. Hence how this came about, doing this just to show what I'd done. So obviously it's nice to try and create that box art look, if you can, if that's what you want. I mean, a lot of people are really creative and they want to, paint their Daughters of Cain with green skin and blue hair or whatever. It's your thing, but I just thought it was quite nice to try and recreate the original box art thing if I could. Obviously, the people who are doing those are professional painters, and they've got all the time in the world and all the gear. And I'm just trying to, give a realistic way of doing this to a level that will look okay on the table, and you maybe feel like a little sense of achievement that you've painted something a bit better than you normally would. Not just let's get some contrast paints and you know, slap it over some zenithal highlight. I'm hoping that shows up quite well now. I hope I'm not going out of shot. The dots there that I'm creating, please be in focus. But I think you can sort of get the idea of what I'm doing here. You often say, I mean, wings are a nightmare to paint. They're not the easiest thing to get. Certainly when they're smooth, if they have no texture to them at all, like these, or other than the veins, they're a very smooth skin wing. So trying to create some sort of feature on them is not easy. At least on some models with wings, they've got either feathers, which, you know, you get that texture there already for you, which is great, and you can, you know, follow that and paint it. But when you're painting a completely flat surface and trying to make something without spending a week doing one wing, which is just, you know, yeah, it's your hobby, and, you know, if you want to do that, go for it. But if you want to just put together your models for gaming at that little bit better standard than just, you know, 3 colours I'm in a tournament kind of thing, go, you know, give this a go. Please give it a go. See how they come out. Hopefully, a bit of inspiration for you. But as you can see, I'm just, you know, I'm taking my time. As you can't see, because I'm probably out the shot again. Amateur YouTuber. I hope you're getting the idea. You know, I mean, the whole point of this was not to make an amazing YouTube video and sell loads of products and blah, blah, blah. It was to try and help the people on the Facebook group who were like, oh, I like your wings, how did you do them? Da, 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 da. I mean, I did offer, I said if there was enough interest, I'd have a go at making a video on how to do it. So, unfortunately, you know, that's the standard of video you're going to get. So, I'll finish off doing these dots. There, you can sort of see that. I hope you can see that. The shape that I've drawn, the dotted line. Then, you know, work away from that and give it a go. Yeah, I'm sure you get the idea. Just give that a go with the Doombull Brown. Okay, so I finished off the Doombull Brown with the dots and faded the colour away. Just really, really thin, washed it down to the bottom edge of the wings. And we're just going to do the same again with Rhinox Hide. The only thing this time really is it kind of throws your eye off a little bit because the wing, the horseshoe, the arch of the wing at the bottom is arching up over. If I'm saying that right, anyway. So it's arching that way. You're creating a horseshoe in the opposite direction. Now, obviously with this brown, the Rhinox Hide, you're going to create a horseshoe. You're going right down to the tip of the edge of the wing, the very bottom edge of the wing. So I'll do this section and show you what I mean. You're having to go right to the very edge. There's not a huge amount of the Rhinox Hide when you're finished at the bottom edge, but you want to be starting, you know, sort of where your dots that you've done here sort of disappear into a solid color, not a solid color because it's obviously transparent a bit, but where your color becomes more predominant here. If you do start your dots, you know, quite high up, don't be frightened, you know, go a little bit too high. And then just horseshoe them down like that. Kind of try and, you know, mimic this curve. Copy that curve that you've done there. You can't really... I mean, if you think of it as being like, you know, they're not real, but as being a real wing on a creature, an animal or whatever, in nature, you wouldn't get absolute perfection in skin. You never do, you know, blotches are wherever blotches are and dots are wherever they are. So, but just, you know, keep that little shape going. So you can see there's a sort of mirror image of that arch is going this way. So the dots there, just carrying them on around here. And then a little bit closer together and closer together until you're just, you know, solid colour at the bottom. It's one of these things where, you know, really you want to start at that end and work this way because you're putting a progressively darker colour on. It's a lot easier to put a dark colour over the top of a light colour, as I'm sure is kind of obvious. I mean, certainly if you're painting things like black and yellow. I did some grots recently, and obviously they've got yellow and the black cloaks and things like that, and it's a lot easier to tidy up with black over the yellow than it is to try and put yellow over the top of black. I mean, yellow is an absolute pain of a colour to paint at the best of times. Can be very, very, very transparent, blotchy. A lot of thin coats needed. Just to try and get any kind of effect. But you can see how these dots are giving you that, it's giving you that line to follow. I shouldn't have done that. I've done a brush stroke there, and it's created a line, which is what you're trying to avoid. You don't want a solid line, because then it makes it look divided into 4 different colours. But what we can do with that is, it's not the end of the world. I mean, things go wrong as you're painting. It can be dotted over with the Doombull brown. You can go back, and that's the whole point of just figuring this out and going back and forward. But you can see how I've made that line a little bit too solid. You don't want a definitive line anywhere if you can help it. You want to try and just create that blend between the two. So I'll finish off doing the Rhinox hide at the bottom edge of this, and then we'll go back. And now the only thing to do after that really is to go into some little wet blending on top. I mean, really it is not that difficult. We're nearly there. A bit of wet blending over the top of these, and then re-establish some of the dots and the veins, and we're really not far away. Right, so I finished off the Rhinox hide at the bottom edge of the wings, and same process again as before, just fading away. The thing to do now is we're going to sort of do a little wet blend over the top of this. You've got to let this dry, make sure it's dry, because if you start to try and wet blend over the top and it's not completely dry, you can tear the paint underneath. You'd have to be pretty rough with it to do that, but it can happen. So it's best to let that really dry off before you do this stage. Hairdryer's fine. I find I just give it a quick whiz over the hairdryer, and you're good to go. But this is where you could make the decision, I suppose, if you're not super confident and you don't want to mess it up, you could probably leave them like this, and when it's stood on the table, you've already got your cheat wet blend, shall we say. It's fooling your eye into looking like you're fading between the colours. And even if you don't want that wet blend look, if you just want that dotted look, stick with it. You could leave them there as they are. But all I did now, I really sort of went back over the top with a very thin wet blend of each colour, and what it did, it took the harsh edge off the dots, if you see what I mean. You still got that dotted effect kind of just about showing through if you look closely. But either way, I mean, I was quite happy with it at this stage, to be honest. I did consider just leaving it, and then I thought, yeah, it looks a bit too dotty for my liking. I want to try and create something. So I've got all my 4 colours open, the four pots of paint, and I'm just gonna start trying to wet blend together. This is a patience thing, and there'll be a lot of waiting for it to dry and things like that, before you move on to the next colour maybe. And don't panic if you make a mess of it. There's nothing you can do that's not fixable. It's paint. You can paint over the top of it, which is great. So we're going to get a little bit of the Cadian Flash tone. I mean, I'm wetting my brush first, so it's it's soaking in water, and just getting a tiny bit on the tip of the brush, and it's almost like you're putting nothing on. The difficulty with this is the reason for these dots was to give you that line to go to. Because if you start to try and wet blend and you've just got a really, really watery mix, and you start to do these lines, it will just run away and puddle into the corner and look terrible. So it's a bit of an art getting that balance between the paint being wet and the paint also sticking to the wing. But just give it a go. It's a trial and error thing. I mean, you're never going to learn if you don't fall down. You're not going to be able to walk. So you can see when I'm putting that paint over the top of those brown dots, all it's doing is it's fading them away. It's, you know, it's making them disappear. They will come back. You can see how the water's running down into there. They will come back. I mean, it's not disastrous. You can, you know, just soak that up. If you find it, oh, it's all running down the bottom, use your brush, just mop it up, get rid of it. That's, you know, one of the beauties of the wet blend. And you can go, right, maybe I've made that a bit too thin. The problem you've got is if you make the paint too thick, you're going to literally just paint over the top of what you've done, and you know you've achieved nothing then really. But the paint will, you see, it's fading away nicely. I'm hoping that shows quite well on camera. It's fading the brown dots away. Yes, this does take a bit of time. There's no two ways about it. It is not a 2-minute process. But on the other hand, it doesn't take forever. I mean, I'm not being particularly neat here. I'm just literally touching the brush on and letting the water do the work. This is not like when you see people doing power weapons and things like that, where they're dragging the paint along and, you know, fading one colour into another. Because you've done the dots, you've already set yourself up. You know, you're there with creating that fade. Don't make hard work of it. It's not difficult. No, I mean, look, what am I doing there? I'm literally just pushing watery paint onto that solid bit of the Khinerai flash tone there. I'm just ending there, and I've just got that real watery bit. You don't want to push it this way, because you'll pool the colour over the Doom Bull Brown. You want to start on the Doom Bull Brown and go up into the Khinerai flash tone. And what you'll also find is, this is the problem with me, you know, trying to talk and do it at the same time. The paint is starting to dry on my brush, and as soon as you touch it on, it's not giving that fade. It's just pooling. It's just drying off too quickly. So yeah, just mess around with it, have a go, see what sort of effect you can create. You know, I'm going to do this colour. Just work with this colour and give that a go, and then let it dry off before you start to do your next colour. So I've done the wet blend there on the Khinerai flash tone. Now it starts to get a little bit of a faff, this bit. You've got to sort of get a mix between the Doom Bull Brown and the Khinerai flash tone, because if you start to try and wet blend your Doom Bull Brown straight onto the Khinerai flash tone, it's a bit too much of a step in colour. So we're going to get a little bit of Doom Bull Brown on the thumbnail, and a little bit of Khinerai flash tone on the thumbnail, and a bit of water, and just mix the two together, and it sort of gives you a bit of a lightened up version of the Doom Bull Brown. And we're just going to sort of dot this on. See, it's like a milky sort of colour. That's milky colour. A milky finish to it, a milky texture to it. And this will just, all this is going to do is, it's going to prevent there being too much of a step between those two colours. I mean, I almost sound like I know what I'm doing, but believe me, I don't. It probably looks like I don't know what I'm doing to a professional painter. Because like I said, this is just something that I made up to try and create this effect. And it's one of those things where, you know, it goes back and forward. It looks okay, and then it looks a mess again. Then it looks okay, and then it looks a mess. But eventually, you know, you get there in the end. You find that mix that works, you know, well, and the right consistency in your paint and things like that, and you'll go, right, I've got it. That's where I want to be. I like the way that looks, and that's when you stop. You know, See, I think I've gone a bit heavy there with the colour, not enough water. Drag it away, get rid of it. It's a wet blend, it's wet, you can move it around and get rid of it. And the beauty of this, certainly doing this on wings and this type of little project, is that we're going to re-establish the dots afterwards. So where it's not gone particularly well or not turned out the way you want it to, when we do the dots again over the top of this, it really disguises, you know, the look of being a bit messy or not being exactly how you wanted it. So I'm just mixing those two colours together and getting a little bit of a fade going on between the two. It does disappear away, you know, to nothing really. It, you know, it looks like you've got a lot on there, and then as you let it dry, it blends in really nice. No, we're not going to win any competitions, but like I said, it's not what we're trying to do. It's, you know, this is maybe a step, you know, towards getting better at wet blending, or, you know, giving you maybe inspiration or encouragement to have a go, you know, do it, try it, and if it comes out half decent, great, you'll go, actually, you know what it is, I quite like doing that, and I like the way it turned out, and I think I'll try doing something else, like a power weapon, or, you know, try a different kind of wet blend on something else. And you know what it's like, you do something, you try, and it's an absolute disaster, and it puts you off, and you think, nah, I don't want to do that. I spent ages messing around trying to create this thing that I wanted to look great, and it didn't look great, and then you lose heart, and maybe you give up a bit. So at least with this, if nothing else, if you take away from it that you had a go, it came out okay, great, I'll carry on doing that with, you know, different projects that I'm into. You can sort of see how the colour's starting to fade there now. Quite nice, but because the dots behind were there, that's helping it blend together. I mean, that's come up really well. I quite like that bit. But I also quite like this. Unfortunately, they look very, very different. But I'm, you know, and it's a make it up as you go along type of thing. Yes, there's a process and a plan to it, but it's how is it going to turn out? It's going to turn out how it turns out. And if you're happy, you're happy. If you're not, you're not. Yeah, I'm going to let that dry for a couple of minutes, and then we'll start add a bit of, I think, a bit more Doombull brown on its own into there. Okay, so I just dried that off with a hairdryer. The thing with a wet blend and using a hairdryer can be a little bit risky, because it's, you know, your paint's very, very runny, and it's wanting to just blow away with a hairdryer. But if you let it go off for, you know, maybe it's a minute or so, and then, you know, just the warmth from the hairdryer alone helps it dry up, and just speeds the process up for you. You know, why do you want to be sitting waiting for the paint to dry? No, you don't. That's just, you know, boring. So quick whiz with a hairdryer just to help it speed things up a little bit. So now on, this is pure Doombull brown, thinned down with the water, and we're just gonna do a little, like a dotty line. Again, dotted line, dotted line, dotted line. And we're going quite high up near the bone. When you get near the bone, sort of creating that horseshoe shape. Keep thinking that horseshoe shape's what you want to create. Now I've just added a pure bit of colour in there without watering it down, although my paint is thin down in the pot. I've just gone straight at the pot because I felt that it was a little bit too thin, and obviously the Rhinox hide underneath is very dark, so I need to try and establish some colour over the top of that with the Doombull brown. So a little bit straight out of the pot, and get so far that and leave it, and, you know, give it some time to dry off while you do the next one. Move on to the next section of the wing, and same again, dot 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 in a horseshoe shape, just creating that blend. A little bit of colour towards the bottom where the Rhinox hide is. And I'm just, you know, I'm really hoping that I'm in focus and on the camera, because this is a one take job. You know, I'm not gonna repeatedly make videos until I get the perfect video. I'm sure you can get the idea from what I'm doing here. And if I'm a little bit out of shot or out of focus or whatever, I'm sorry. It's just I've got so long to do this, and it's gonna come out how it comes out. Hopefully, it's coming out okay. But if all works out well, great. You've got something from it. Literally just dotting the brush. I'm not, you know, doing brush strokes. I'm just dot, 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 dot all the time. Dot, dot, dot. Just dabbing it on there and creating that horseshoe shape. See, that one's come up really well. There's a nice fade going on there. On the camera and close up, you know, when you're looking at it from 3 inches away, you're going to see how it's been done. But when it's standing on the table, believe me, it will just look like a faded wing. Rather appropriate that I'm doing this on Halloween with bat-looking wings. There we go. Quite happy with that. It's starting to fade together quite nice. So the last thing to do on this bit, or the last colour for now, is the Rhinox hide towards the bottom. So before that Doombull brown has dried, I haven't let that dry off. I'm just going straight onto the Rhinox hide, and you'll get a little bit of blend together there. The beauty of this is obviously because we've done the bone and the Rhinox hide. You can go up to the bone there with this colour, and it doesn't matter that you're getting onto there. But again, horseshoe shape, get that horseshoe shape. Create that look. Okay, and we'll let that dry off. Give it a minute or so, and then a quick whiz with a hairdryer. We'll move on to the next step. Right, so now at the stage where the wet blend is pretty much done. What you can do is anywhere where you feel that the dots, your Doombull brown dots, are showing through a bit too much. If you don't like how they're looking, you can just a bit of Cadian Flash Tone, or a mix of Cadian Flash Tone and a little bit of Doombull brown, and wet blend over the top, and just keep going. Do that a few times until you know you're happy that they've gone. Or if you want to leave them there as an undertone, fine, just leave them there. So on this part of the wing, if we can see on the camera, I don't really have any dots shown at all. It's worked really well. Whereas here, I don't know how well you can see that in the camera, but it's the dots are quite obvious. But what I'm now going to do is I'm going to create the spotted effect with the Cadian Flash Tone onto this bit of the Doombull brown. And what you can do is use your Cadian Flash Tone to dot over the top of these darker spots underneath, and it'll help disguise them. So I'll do that on camera, and just we'll see how that goes and how that looks. Like I say, this is it really is a make it up as you go along painting effect. It's almost, I suppose, not something that I'm into, painting pictures, but I think if you were, an artist and painting pictures, it's the same kind of thing, really. I'm sure as you paint a picture, you change things and things develop and you alter colours and mix them in. It's the same kind of principle, really. You're not painting like you would on the rest of a model where you're putting your base coat on, a shade and a couple of highlights, and there you go. This is because it's the flat surface situation. You're having to a bit of artistic license and just create something as it goes along. So, bit of paint on the brush, not too much. And we're just going to do some dots. And again, I'm going to continue with that thing of the horseshoe shape and just try to create it. So I'm going to start in the Cadian flesh tone and move out over. I'm not going to start putting dots over here and go, yeah, oh, I've created a line, it looks terrible. So I'm going to start over here, which is very subtle. You're not really going to see them, but I'm going over the top of the Doom Ball brown underneath, and I'm doing really really tiny dots and trying not to be uniform about it. Although I'm working in a horseshoe shape, I don't want to make horseshoe shaped lines like we were earlier. I want to be a little bit more sort of random, as if, I don't know if you've ever done like the white spots on mushrooms, the red mushrooms with the white dots on. If you've painted any of those for scenery or your bases, it's the same type of thing. You wouldn't do those white dots in a straight line like buttons on a shirt. You do them all over randomly to create that. So that's what we're doing by doing this quite randomly. We're creating a fade into the next color there with the dots. And this might be a case of really, it's the less is more thing. If you go too far with it, it can look wrong, I suppose, if that's the right thing to say. How can something that doesn't exist look wrong? But I'm kind of being more horseshoe shaped than anything if I can. And then I'm quite happy with that. I've created a transition between the two. It's sort of disguised that messy wet blend line a bit. I can see a little bit of a brown line here, so I'm going to try and break that line up with some dots. And as the paint dries as well, certainly you'll get this with skin tones, that you'll put them on, you go, whatever that was. You'll put them on and they'll look very. Lost my train of thought there with that tray falling over in the kitchen. Yeah. It's definitely Halloween, isn't it? Right, I just had to go and check and make sure the house hadn't fallen over or something, whatever that noise was. So yeah, I'm just gonna carry on with the Cadian flesh tone, doing these little dots and creating that fade between the two. On this section of the wing, you can see it's quite a predominant line, so I'm going to try and disguise that by dotting over it. And we're just taking these dots down a little bit too far into the next colour. And just when you're happy, that's when you stop. When you think, yeah, I like how that's looking, let's just go with that. It's your model, you make the decision. You shouldn't really care what other people think of it. I'm using this Cadian flesh tone, neat from the pot. Although when I say neat from the pot, my pots are really thin down. And there we go. So all I've really got left to do now is use the Caribou Crimson on the veins, which that is something that you don't again have to do. I just did it because I was trying to create that box arty thing, and neaten up the bones with some Rhinox hide, and that really is, you know, all you need to do, and you've sort of created that effect. And I'm hoping that you're happy with what you've done. If you followed along, or if you just watched to see what was going on and how it happened. And if you are just watching and seeing how it's, you know, how it's done, not actually having these models and having a go, great. You could, you know, use this technique on a different model, or, you know, whatever. That's the whole point of this, I guess. And I suppose you could just mix up the colors. You know, I've used the colors that I've used for this model. You just really want, you know, maybe 4 colors of transition to get a nice blend, you know, this on this sort of sized wing. You could pick yellows, greens, whatever, you know, or yellow and green, I suppose, would go together, or yellow and green and blue. So you could start off with a yellow and then into a green, then into a blue. Might look quite nice if you want to try that, and just would be good. Certainly if you're on the Facebook group for the Daughters of Cain, if you do decide to do them in another colour, I'd love to see some pictures and see what you've created. And if you've used this method, brilliant. If I've inspired you to have a go with a different colour, I'd be, you know, really interested to see, you know, see how yours has come out. And in the future I might have a go with a different, you know, a different colour palette and try that. So that's where we are with the wing so far. Looks pretty good. Quite happy with that. Definitely good tabletop standard. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, well, that's above tabletop standard," but it depends how you want to paint your models. If you just want to lash some colours on and play your game, great, go for it. But if I'm going to spend more than we probably should on some plastic models, it's probably worth putting that bit of time and effort in, you know, to enjoy them. And certainly, I think most people will agree that there's a lot of grey armies out there, and a lot of people play with half-built models on a base. And yeah, you can get away with it and have fun, but it's a much nicer, you know, experience if you've got a decent table and some painted models, and just makes you want to put them on the table and play them. You know, that's the thing, I suppose, as well. So we'll let that dry off, and then we're gonna tidy up the Rhinox hide on the bones and do the veins with the Caribou Crimson. Okay, so I've tidied up the bone work with Rhinox hide, just sort of neaten that up a bit, and all that's left to do now is the veins. I mean, like I say, you don't have to do this. You don't have to, you know, paint the veins on. I found that when I did it, it sort of brought it to life a little bit. But, you know, as with everything, it's an option. It's an option to you. This is, to be honest, really, really tricky. I'm using the Caribou Crimson neat out the pot. I've not, you know, messed with that in any way. I haven't diluted it or anything. It's as it came from Games Workshop. So I'm using the same brush still the same zero brush, and just following the vein lines. Now what I'm doing is I'm sort of working from the end of the vein back over where the finest point of the vein would be. They're not easy to see, and I'm trying to film this, but I'm trying to also see where the end of that vein is, and it's really, really not easy. But I'm sure you get the idea of what I'm going to do, and just try and paint those raised up lines. I mean, you know, GW have done the hard work for you. They've made the model. They've sculpted it really well and left those veins, you know, predominant. And again, the beauty of painting is if it doesn't go quite to plan, get a bit of your Kislev flesh or your Cadian flesh tone and and touch it up, you know. I mean, I know fine well I'm going to have to go back and go over this and do it, but I'm just trying to let you see how I painted the vein. So I'm going to go and do them off camera, and you know, I don't want to get to this stage of the job and make a mess of it. So I'll do my veins off camera, but that's all I've done. I've just used Caribou Crimson. Okay, so there we have it. I've painted in the veins with Caribou Crimson, and they're awkward to do, you know, but it's not essential. Some of the veins on some of the wings are better than others. What I actually did on the first model, on this one, I painted the veins further down onto the lower part of the wing than they actually are in the moulding. So I just painted those little lines, just to make them look more, you know, more obvious. But I hope you've enjoyed the video, and hope you have a go at, you know, creating your own effects. And like I say, maybe do it with some other colours, and I'd love to see that. But thanks for watching.